Ladies and gentlemen, boys and NBs, I wanted to do something a little bit different today because the other day I saw Geeky Pastimes post this video about skill gaps being bad for gaming, and I couldn't disagree more. Now, mind you, my first reaction was kind of like this, and I thought he had absolutely lost his crackers.
We didn't have tornadoes here until we started putting into traffic circles. When people go round and round in circles, it causes disturbance in the atmosphere and causes tornadoes.
But after listening to his video, I can absolutely understand where he's coming from, though I absolutely do still think that he's wrong, and I wanted to break it down and give my opinions. Geeky Pastimes has been around for a long time and is known for both hot takes and getting it right about half of the time. So let's break this down and see where he's coming from and see if we can't find a happy medium in the middle. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'm posting almost every single day. Sometimes I get worn out and I take a day off, but almost all the time you'll get a new video. All right, let's get into it.
Skill gaps are massively important in video games. They describe the possible difference in ability between the very best players and the very worst. In this video, I'm going to explain how they can be a terrible thing for video games, particularly Call of Duty, and how the game could benefit from a few significant changes. I started thinking about this when I saw this Gears of War clip. It shows a player using something called wall bouncing, a technique that lets you kind of move quickly and unpredictably around, giving you a huge advantage over people that can't do it. Some people in the comments were praising how amazing things like this were in the game, and plenty of other people were saying, oh wow, this is why I don't play Gears of War multiplayer. And I'm definitely in the latter camp.
Alright, so I'm assuming he's going to tie wall bouncing back to slide canceling, which, again, slide canceling was originally a bug that is now a feature within Modern Warfare 3 and Warzone, and I'm not a fan of slide canceling. A lot of you guys do know that. I think it is not something that is a skill, it's more of a crutch, so I'm assuming that's where he's going to go with it. I didn't finish this video, but the same can be said about wall bouncing in Gears of War. It is also a glitch that people use to get an advantage. One of my very best friends and the bass player in the band I toured all over the world with is a huge Gears of War fan, and that is his main game. And I did talk to him about it before making this video, and it's looked at by the community broadly as a glitch. Hopefully it's not in the next Gears of War is what he had to say, but we'll see about that. I plan to play through the campaigns with him because they're always co-op and they're always a great time. Let's see what else Geeky has to say, and let's move forward.
So some games have a huge skill gap, like Counter-Strike for example. The best players will train their aim for hundreds of hours, know the precise timings that enemy players are likely to appear at, like certain peak spots on the map, and deeply understand the recoil pattern for every weapon so they can use them essentially without recoil. All of that, coupled with things like single-shot headshots taking you out of the game, means that a new player just doesn't stand a chance against a seasoned one.
And this section right here is actually why I decided to make this video as a response, because I played Counter-Strike professionally for 6 years and finished 3rd place at CPL Texas in 2006 or 2007. I cannot remember. It was Team 50 Cal. It was a fantastic time, and I was in Cal Invite for 7 seasons total. With Counter-Strike, there are one-shot headshots, but they are not always guaranteed. You can dink people even with an AK and an M4, doing only 94 damage, leaving them with 6 HP, as well as with smaller cal like your Glock or your USP only doing 86 damage to the head if they have a helmet on, or it will do 96 again sometimes if they don't have a helmet and you hit a headshot. It all depends on if you hit the side of the head or center mass of the head. Counter-Strike is an incredibly competitive game, and I absolutely loved playing it. I actually quit playing because I was getting panic attacks due to playing at the skill level I was playing at back before esports had any real money in it. I am quite old for this scene, much like Geeky Pastimes. Not an insult. We're the old guard. I completely understand. He mentions joysticks and the changes in controllers later on, and I absolutely understand. However, I am a keyboard and mouse player, so that doesn't really apply to me. So that's about all I'm going to say on it. As for Counter-Strike, though, Counter-Strike and Call of Duty are similar in many, many ways and should have similar skill gaps. And yes, new players are going to have a rough time, but it does not take long to figure out how to play either game.
Other games like Mario Kart go to great lengths to reduce the skill gap as much as possible. There's assist options to make you automatically slide and even turn then accelerate. Cars at the back of the pack will go faster than those at the front, and they get better items to help them catch up. This means that while the new player is still unlikely to beat someone who knows the game really well, they at least have a chance to stay in the mix and kind of recover from mistakes.
And sure, Mario Kart absolutely does have all of those features, such as the blue shell or giving you better power-ups when you run them over if you're at the back of the pack versus the front, and that's because it is a party game. It is not a competitive game, such as Call of Duty or Counter-Strike, or like on screen, Forza Motorsport. I am in the top 50 in the world rankings for rivals on almost every track in Forza Motorsport. I have a full sim rig. I love playing this game. It's what I do to relax, and I've used it as a little bit of B-roll here on the channel before. The reason I'm bringing up Forza Motorsport is a game that takes an immense amount of skill to play at a top level. Johnny Tsunami, the Porsche that I'm racing against, is another guy in the top 50 on almost every single track, and this is him and I going back and forth battling in a random public lobby on a Tuesday morning at like 5 a.m. It was a fantastic amount of fun, and we had a full-on hour-long conversation after the race talking about how much fun this single race was. That's what competition brings to the table. Though the Call of Duty community has a lot of toxicity, it is great to have conversations with other players when you best them or they best you. Johnny, if you see this, I definitely took the dub here, though you definitely took the next one when we met the next time. And to tie this back to Call of Duty, that skill gap is what exists in Warzone and Modern Warfare 3 and will most likely be there at a higher rate within Black Ops 6 with Omni movement and all of the other changes they're making. This skill gap is what makes gaming fun. Yes, it can be daunting as a new player, but coming into it as a new player, you know this on the doorstep.
Since 2007, while the Call of Duty series has dabbled with things like death streaks to help people get back into the game, they have consistently gone down that route of rewarding the most able players with more advantages and then punishing people who make mistakes absolutely brutally. And this philosophy's been reflected in the marketing too. Activision celebrate high-skill players. They organise and support competitive COD leagues and tournaments. They retweet clips of players doing incredible things and use the kind of languages that kind of focuses on there being a big skill gap, like talking about pros or making jokes about Christmas noobs. All of this has filtered back into the player base and the online Call of Duty community.
So of course the marketing team is going to go after the things that get the most eyes on the game, and that is just highly skilled play. The jokes about Christmas noobs have been a thing in all games for a decade now, maybe longer, so they're going to do it. It's obviously going to happen. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this. And once again, should they be rewarding the players who are bad at the game with the strongest things in the game, so it's even harder for those who have taken the time to get good at the game? That way that people can get into the game and then be like, wait, if I get better, the game is going to make it harder for me, so why would I get better when I can just do bad and have a better time? The skill gap is at the heart of gaming. It has been there all the way back to Pong. Skill gaps are in every single game. Some have a steep one like Elden Ring, and some don't like Mario Kart. Call of Duty is a competitive shooter with an esports league, and it needs to have a skill gap. Zombies is definitely the casual mode, and I chose some footage from Zombies for the background on purpose. Call of Duty is a very, very competitive game, and it needs to stay that way, or it just won't sell copies. At the end of the day, the marketing follows what is popular, and the most skilled players get the most praise. That's why streamers who have a better skill mostly tend to bring in more viewers, though personality is definitely a part of it, and that's why a lot of people cannot make it on skill alone, and there are players such as myself who have a lower KD that are still able to make money in this space.
Look anywhere on Twitter, Reddit, YouTube videos, TikTok, and you'll see clips of high-level play or players boasting about their insanely high kill-death ratios, or they just say it casually. They'll just be like, well, I've only got a KD of 3.5, I know that makes me average. Or they'll be talking about how many nukes they've managed to get, or how many Warzone matches they win, and the crazy streaks they've managed to get to. And they post all of this alongside other posts by the same players complaining about broken metas and playstyles they don't like, and how terrible the COD servers are, and how unplayable the game is because of cheaters. Anyone with a 1 kill death or below is just dismissed as being trash. Depending on where you look, sometimes it's like, oh, anyone with less than a 2 kill death is a noob or they're casual, and their opinion doesn't matter because they're not good enough at the game to keep up.
And of course, people are going to post their dubs, their wins, all of their good content because it makes them feel good and they want to share it to the communities so they can get even more of the dopamine our brains so desperately crave. This is normal human interaction. You'll see it in racing, you'll see it in video gaming, you'll see it in anything. If someone does something that is cool, fun, or good, they're going to want to share it and get more dopamine out of that one act, and that's what they're doing here. However, a lot of this is kind of a straw man though, because you're tying the awful servers and awful anti-cheat into the skill gap argument. These servers are absolutely awful with like a 5 tick rate, and Ricochet barely works if you even can say it works at all. As for the rest of this, I agree. The kill death should not matter if anyone's opinion matters. It should be everyone has a voice here, but that's not how Twitter works. Twitter is the largest cesspool on the internet outside of probably 4chan, though they are very similar these days. And I personally stay away from it as much as I can, though I will get on there once in a while. If you're looking at the opinions on Twitter, of course you're going to drive yourself insane, and I think that's where your problem comes from here, because the overall community is not as toxic as you see on Twitter. I don't see people in every game that I play just talking absolute smack, though it does happen. Most games I go into, no one's even on the mic, and in Warzone especially, you're not going to talk to many players unless you're exchanging after you've killed somebody and they're going, wait, how did that happen? Or you're confused. And yes, people pretty much call each other cheaters when they die because the Ricochet anti-cheat is so awful.
And this sentiment loops back into the game design. So while Modern Warfare 2's first public test experimented with making the game a little bit more intuitive, we're talking about the 2022 Modern Warfare 2 by the way, they tried to make the game a bit more intuitive. They had things like loud footsteps making up for having less information on the minimap, high recoil weapons, attachments with significant downsides so basic weapons could still be used, and the removal of things like slide cancelling. And a very vocal part of the community, the more sort of hardcore part of the community, rallied against this. They were arguing that it reduced the skill gap too much. They said it made gunfights random and meant casual players now had a chance against the most hardcore, and that wasn't fair.
And this is where Geeky Pastimes and myself fundamentally disagree. Modern Warfare 2 2022 had a much wider skill gap than Modern Warfare 3. Sure, there was no slide canceling, which was originally a glitch. Remember that, but the skill gap with the weapons, not including the RNG that they did take out pretty early on, but overall with the high recoil and to get more from your gun in an attachment you had to do a trade-off, all of these things broadened the skill gap and made the game much more of an ocean instead of a puddle. Now when you put, say, a long barrel on a gun, you don't have to worry about adding 1/10 of a second to your aim down sight speed to get that velocity and recoil control that you want so bad. It just gives it to you without any real downsides. Again, in the game, the movement of last year took so much more skill to get around the map than it does this year. Yes, the game played slower, but it was much, much less forgiving. And that is why people complain so much, and we now have this insane 300 HP instead of 250 with an absurd TTK to where it takes an entire magazine of 5.56 to kill someone past 30 meters. It's just everything is out of whack. That's why one-shot snipers, now that they're back, are extremely overpowered because you cannot take them on with an AR because of how long the TTK with an AR is. Everything was so much better last year, and we didn't have one-shot snipers, but if we did, it absolutely would have worked. Modern Warfare 2022 was the Call of Duty that had the largest skill gap of all time, and that's why so many people didn't like it. The proof being, those that actually played the game dropped nukes last year, and those that are dropping nukes this year are not the same caliber of player. Sure, those that are dropping both are very good, but it is much easier to drop a nuke this year than it was last year. The movement this year being all cracked out and relying on aim assist to do all of your aiming just ain't it. Last year it was about being able to position, think, and outplay your opponents, and yes, having a snappy aim and being able to get into a gunfight with your reaction times did matter and was a skill you needed. At the end of the day, what it came down to was it was chess, not checkers.
On Steam charts, while I know that's a bad way to judge the popularity of a game, it's got Warzone wrapped into it, and it also probably has the lowest player count of any platform, but Modern Warfare 2 peaked at 488,000 players, while Modern Warfare 3 peaked at 190,000 players, way less than half. The reason for this, to me at least, seems simple. The hardcore group of Call of Duty players that are extremely vocal in content creation and on social media have been playing these games for years, decades in some cases, and they're completely dedicated to just this one game series, and they finally have a game that fits their preferences for an incredibly high skill gap. All the normal players, who form the vast majority of players and aren't anywhere near the same skill level because maybe they haven't played for that long, or they play lots of other games, or they just don't care that much, they just can't compete. A normal player will load up a match of Warzone right now, maybe struggle through and get a kill at the start due to the RNG of hot drops, and then they'll quickly get blasted out of the game by somebody who's got meta guns, crazy movement, amazing map awareness, and lightning fast reflexes. They won't stand a chance in that gunfight, and then they'll go to the gulag and get destroyed by someone who's been watching videos on how to perfect that particular gulag, making use of head glitches so they give themselves the biggest advantage possible. Then the normal player will just turn off the game and play something else. Like, why wouldn't you?
Yes, but movement, awareness, and rotations, all of these things were super important last year as well. I would argue more important last year than this year. Last year, you had to be hyper-focused on your positions at all times, or you could get gunned in half a second anywhere on the map. You couldn't YY and just slide across the map out of danger. You had to know what you were doing. And yes, it is hyper-focused on a certain group of individuals, but I would argue those people are not the most skilled players of first-person shooters. Are they the most skilled COD players? This year, yes. However, this year was custom tailored for them, and they're complaining even more this year than last year. That's because last year, Infinity Ward made an incredible game based at the vast majority of first-person shooter gamers, and it was incredible. So many people joined Call of Duty, joined DMZ, joined Warzone, and even the base game. It was an incredible experience for everyone involved except for those hardcore players of Call of Duty that keep dragging this franchise into the ground. They're complaining now, and they're looking back at last year with the rose-tinted glasses they do every year. This happens all of the time, and Infinity Ward, I would argue, are the best developers simply because they do not listen to these people. That's why last year was so good. Another reason there were so many players last year is DMZ. DMZ was such an incredible experience, and there still is nothing like it. Hopefully DMZ returns soon, because Activision is missing a huge bag by not having DMZ as one of their games. DMZ can be a part of Warzone or be standalone, but DMZ is such a wonderful experience, and there is literally nothing like it. It's not like Tarkov or any other extraction shooter due to the final exfils, the exfils themselves, where you actually have to fight. Everyone on the map can see what you're doing. It is less of a hardcore experience. There's less barrier to entry, but it still has all of that skill gap that is required when you get into a gunfight. You don't have to spend 5 minutes healing after you fight. You can continue on with what you were doing if you win the fight. That is why DMZ was so good, and this transfers over into Warzone. All of the things that I just said were there last year in Warzone, and a lot of them are not this year. You have a higher TTK, meaning it's more about your aim, not your positioning. Your positioning can be awful and you can still win the fight. The only thing that matters is having the fastest reaction time and keeping your crosshairs on target, which your controller's aim assist does 95% of it for you. So there's really not any skill there, at least in my opinion. I can say on keyboard and mouse, you do have to try harder to keep shots on target longer this year with less recoil because it takes so long to kill. I would much rather have a high recoil pattern and a lower time to kill than no recoil and a high time to kill, because it's just harder to play that way.
So what's the solution? How can Call of Duty still attract new players while also keeping the vast majority of normal players happy and still provide something for the most hardcore? They just need to lower the skill gap. If a new or bad player has a chance against even the best players, they're more likely to stick around. If you can sometimes get a lucky win or a great kill streak, you're more likely to have a good time. The most hardcore will probably fume that their dedication isn't being rewarded, but honestly, who cares? It's a video game. They're statistically a tiny part of the audience, so if they quit playing, which we both know they won't, it doesn't really matter.
And this is the part in the video where I absolutely started to agree with everything Geeky Pastimes had to say, for the most part. He started saying that number one, they need less guns, and I disagree with that, and that they need less attachments. I also disagree with that. However, he did say that the guns need to be harder to use, they need to remove slide cancel, focus on the omnidirectional movement, which is going to be incredible, and I really hope they do this, and they need to do things like make bullets actually come out of the guns and not out of where your field of view is set or the head of your character, which this raises the skill gap even further, not diminish it. This is absolutely a great idea as well. They need to slow down movement, they need to bring the TTK down so it's not so absurd. All of this raises the skill gap. All of this makes it harder to play the game because it's not all relying on directional aim assist to do the job for you. You actually need to think, you need to use your brain, and you need to make sure that you are in power positions and outplaying your opponent. The way the game is right now, there just simply is no skill to it. Run at your target and make sure you continue to move while shooting, jump around, and hope that your aim assist outperforms their aim assist. The reason that Modern Warfare 3 has done so bad is combinations of how low skilled the game truly is and the fact that Sledgehammer made the game so it is absolutely soulless with its ridiculous skins, its campaign that was awful, and then the seasons have not brought the narrative forward in any way whatsoever. The game is absolutely soulless, and this is the biggest downside for Modern Warfare 3. However, Modern Warfare 2 was a game that took oodles more skill to play, and I will fight anyone over that. What we have this year is an absolute disgrace compared to what it could have been. I've been Nolsey. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Make sure to give Geeky Pastimes a like and a subscribe as well. But until next time, boys, leave me alone and like the video.
You always getting into thinking I should bust you.